All right, everybody. It's another week, another What's the F is happening or has happened. There's a lot going on right now. Well, just headline news is, Trump is finalizing his tariff plans. Do any of you even know what's going on with the tariffs? One day there's tariffs on this. The next day there's not. The next day it's adjusted. The next day it's not. The next day it's on something new. The next day it's not. Can you keep track of it all? We've been trying. I've fallen a little off the wagon this week, but we're going to talk about what that could mean and why everybody might have this whole thing blown out of proportion. But not only that, how about Tesla? What's going on with Tesla? Well, as of today, they're shipping less cars than they did last year. Well, I can probably understand that because, I guess in certain parts of the country, people are just vandalizing Teslas. The same people that supported Teslas might I make a remark. And private companies added 155,000 jobs in March. ADP says that's more than expected. I say wait for the revisions before you get your panties in a ruffle or get too excited. So on top of that, we're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine and Zelensky. We're going to talk about Russia. We're going to talk about Iran and some things happening there. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today on what the F happened. So we'll be right back after this. All right. We are back at it as I go live on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Me and my trusted co-host, Mr. Snaggy. What's happening down there in Florida?
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, trusted, except I wasn't here the last couple of weeks, so I apologize for that, but it's good to be back at What the F. Just had some travel going on, and we're going to have some fun here today. Hopefully, what you guys think of last week with money mentor Brian Fouts and Andy Tanner in the house last week? Anybody watch that show? Let me know how that was. I caught a few pieces of it. It sounded great. I actually known Andy Tanner for almost 20 years. I haven't seen him in quite a few years, but he was one of my original sales trainers when I first got into the financial education, real estate investment seminar industry. So kind of a little throwback right there, which I thought was kind of cool bringing him on the show. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, but a lot going on. Obviously, like Chris said in the news, we got jobs reports. We got the gold market going crazy. The tariffs are finalized today. We'll get into what that might mean and what the markets are doing, how they're reacting to all that. Like you said, the jobs report, Doge continues just to surprise and really just mind-blowing stuff that Doge continues to come out with. Signalgate was going on. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about this week. So Chris, we can get into it, but I say we start with kind of headline news, top of the mind, what's driving the markets right now, which
I have top line headline news, if I may. This is super important. I just read UFC signs a wide-ranging sponsorship with none other than Mark Zuckerberg. How many of you want to see Dana White and Mark Zuckerberg in the octagon? How many of you want to see that? How many of you think Mark Zuckerberg's going to kick Dana White's ass? Isn't it kind of strange? Like, if you really follow the history of Mark Zuckerberg, he's just a transient little, I don't even know what you call him. He's a very, very wealthy man. I love what he built. I love his take to the technology he created. But you know what? It's just like, pick a side, buddy. You just, as the wind blows, you just kind of float. But I guess that's what they all do because Amazon's no different. And Google, well, who knows about them. But Stephen, that's my top line news. I don't think it's moving the markets, but let's have you take a shot at what's moving the markets right now.
Yeah, man. It's I just was pulling up the markets, obviously just opened up, and we're down 250 on the Dow to open the day. I know everybody's watching what's going on with these tariffs right now, and so if we kind of dig into as they finalize the plans and these start to go into force, how that's affecting the trade market. So basically, Trump's set to unveil the new tariffs today at the White House. Trump's going to detail sweeping new levies on imported goods in the United States at the Rose Garden at 4 p.m. Eastern. Most economists, most people in the markets, brokers, they're looking at this as something that's going to increase prices for Americans. It's going to slow trade and everything going on globally. And so, the markets are kind of reacting a little negatively. This was all expected. A lot of it's built into the cake already. But basically, Trump is saying the tariffs are intended to be reciprocal, meaning they will be imposed on imports from countries that either collect duties or erect trade barriers on U.S. goods that the White House considers unfair. The Trump administration officials have set their sights on a group of 20 countries that export far more to the U.S. than they import. Today's tariffs are going to be effective immediately. The White House has sent mixed messages about what to expect today, but internal debate between Trump's closest advisors over the scope of the plan. But everybody says that he's going to be putting them in force, and we'll see where it goes with that. Now, like Trump tends to do, we saw it happen a lot in the first term. It's happened a lot over the last couple months already in the second term. He seems to use things like tariffs to try and get what he really wants. It looks like he's going into this term with guns blazing, moving very, very quickly, as everybody can see. And it's interesting to watch the news, kind of try and keep up with it and try and keep their distractions going to keep people away from it. We get more into that later. But bottom line is Trump is making moves and people don't know how to react. I think we're getting a lot of mixed signals. And, that's why we've seen the markets over the last couple of weeks just really up and down, really volatile swings. And so something that everybody's keeping an eye on, and then you look at what's going on in the world, and then you go out there and you talk to people. And Chris, I don't know if you chat with a lot of people. I know we were at a mastermind last week in Tampa. That's why we missed What the F, with a lot of business owners and investors. But for the most part, people I'm talking to, the word on the street around my circles, at least, is that we're going to see a downturn coming this year. I mean, I think most people are bracing for impact. Sales have started to slow. Last year going into this year, things have started to slow down. Everybody seems to really be trying to get traction, find where they can get it, and things. But when you look at housing data, which we'll talk about in a minute, we look at mortgages. We haven't really seen anything going on there yet. So just a lot going on, man. I know you've talked a lot about the tariffs, though. So today's the day. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I have talked a lot about the tariffs, and I have talked to a lot of people, some very, very smart people. I've talked to people in PE, private equity, and we're going to hit private equity a little bit. I've talked to a lot of, peers in the financial industry, and, it's a mixed bag. I think they all agree we're going to see a slowdown. Some of them don't agree to my, opinions that it's going to be a severe slowdown, a severe fallout, and probably a recession. I can't see any other way out of that. But I do have a lot of economists that I follow, as I talk about a lot. We have white papers that come in every day. I can't even keep up with them anymore. The white papers are going wild from these economists, and it all points the same place: a drastic slowdown, an economy that can't sustain where it's been, massive money printing, through the pandemic and after, that created the biggest bubble of our lives, period, that must pop, and it's going to. And I don't think the tariffs are going to be the thing that pops it. I think there's other things that will be the first domino, but I don't know. I mean, there's still lots of hanky-panky going on out there. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about what's happening in PE, private equity. It's pretty much criminal. I can't see how to call it anything else. I'm not a private equity fan, and I almost feel like, gosh, I feel terrible to even say this, but I think PE will probably be what buys one of my companies someday. So it's kind of almost like sick that I'm saying that. But, when you really look at everything else and you look at all the signs and you look at history and you just map it out, it's not hard to see. I will tell you that by 2026, we're in a recession. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't time the market. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I can't tell you how it's going to happen. I can't tell you, exactly what's going to be the domino that takes it all down. But no one could have done any of that in prior ones. I mean, I guess you could say Burry kind of nailed it with the subprime, and everything that was happening in the mortgage industry back in 2006 and 2007 when he was shorting. I don't know what this one will be, but I can certainly tell you, if all of you are not getting ready and planning and getting out of the market and taking your gains off the table, you're going to be really, really sorry you didn't, because no matter how much of a slowdown or how little of a slowdown it is, it's going to create opportunities. And also, this is the biggest urgent warning I'll give you, is don't jump too fast. I was talking to somebody yesterday, a very, very wealthy man. And he was saying, you think I should start buying back into the market, when it dips like this? I said, no, not at all. Follow the fundamentals, just watch Warren Buffett. When he's making moves, that's when you make moves, but don't get swayed by Warren Buffett making small little buys, because he has to. He's always got to be investing, but look at his cash hoard. Okay. Over 325 billion. When he starts putting that to work, that's when you'll know that maybe there's a buying opportunity, but there's been no signs of that yet. So I just think most people need to get ready. I mean, listen, these opportunities, because that's what I'm going to call it, like a recession, a downturn, a slowdown in the economy, they all create massive opportunities, because you're going to see deflation. You have to. I mean, it's supply and demand. It's the simplest things we all learned back in high school in economics class. There's supply, there's demand. When the economy slows down, what slows down? Demand. So what must also happen? Well, supply and price too. When you look at the price action of that, when less people are willing to buy, which you're already seeing. Look at the airline industry. You want to talk about a leading indicator? Look at the airline industry. That's your gauge, slowing way down. That's a very good sign of the direction that we're going to go. So when all of that slows down, then eventually what comes after companies slow down? Layoffs, downsizing, people lose jobs. What happens when people lose jobs? They spend less money. What happens when they spend less money? Businesses suffer, businesses scale down, businesses close, go bankrupt. And you're already seeing all this. And the other hidden gem in this data that and listen, folks, I know this is boring to some of you, but just watch my YouTube videos. Like literally, I've been doing YouTube videos every single day for years. And we've been real heavy lately on recession proofing your lives and your financial futures. Like everything I put out there on the YouTube channel, all get you ready. I'm just giving you the highlights. But the other big thing you really, really have to be looking at is just the signs. I mean, the inverted yield curve is a good one. All of these signs, gold, look at what gold's doing. What do you think that's telling you? Stephen, where's gold at today?
Yeah, I was going to bring up gold. It's wild what's going on with gold. I mean, it's
nuts.
I mean, we're at 31.28 right now.
31.28, and don't even begin to tell me that's because of tariffs. Gold, when it goes up, means there's a lot of fear. Means that people are scared. Means that people are defensive, and it's not just people; it's institutions. But then you've got the select few. I don't know what I'm going to call them. I guess just the blind lead the blind, and they're watching the news, and they're watching CNBC and they're watching CNN and they're watching any news station, even Fox News, and they're seeing the markets and they're like, well, the markets are going up. Yes, no, and maybe. But what you have to understand, and I've covered this in nauseum, the S&P 500, just look at that. It's the 500 largest stocks. Are there really 500 stocks driving the returns in the S&P 500? Well, I would say really 7 stocks are driving it. You could expand that to 10. 10 stocks out of 500. What percentage of 500 is 10? Low, right? So if 10 stocks are driving 60% of the returns in the S&P 500, is that a good metric? Pause. Go back to 1929 and look at what the stock market was doing back then. The same exact thing it's doing now. You had the indexes being consolidated to a number of couple mega stocks that everybody was plowing their money into. And then all of a sudden, poof, it went. That's what's going to happen here, folks. And you're already seeing it. You're seeing Tesla showing signs of weakness. You're seeing the tech industry, which is largely those 10 stocks are information tech, AI. They haven't even figured out how to monetize AI. Did you know that? We're like the lab rats, okay? We're the test pilots. And they're spending billions, if not trillions of dollars having us test it, train it, do everything. And then they got to figure out how to monetize it, which they will, but when is that going to happen? So if you're betting everything on AI, well, just know that it's going to take a little bit longer for your returns to come out of that. But the speculation is there for sure. All I'm trying to say is you better get yourself prepared, get yourself defensive, get yourself in liquid cash, treasury, T-bill, cash value, life insurance, some place where the money isn't going to go down when everything else does, because then you're sitting pretty. And then when everything deflates from real estate to, everything will go down. It's price action. Then you'll have the opportunity to take advantage of all sorts of opportunities at drastically reduced prices. That's the simplest thing I can tell you. And also, real quick plug, do any of you live in San Diego? Well, if you do, I'm flying out there today. And tonight I'm going to be at the Legacy International Hotel. Okay. It's like I guess it's like 15 minutes from the airport, but I'll be putting this up on my Insta story. So at the Chris Naugle, follow me on Instagram. And I'm going to be doing a little pop-up event, just a kind of meet and greet, I don't know, let's hang out at the lobby bar, say hello, shake some hands, tell some stories and just have some fun. No strings attached, no agenda, no registration, just show up and we'll chat. So I'll be there tonight. 7 p.m. is when the kickoff or the pop-up kicks off. So I'll see you then. Stephen, what do you got?
Yeah, good stuff, man. I mean, just to follow up, you're saying, kind of keep an eye on the markets. I mean, just already this year, just to give you some stats, like the S&P is down 4.2% over the past month and 8.4% below its record high earlier this year. The tech-heavy NASDAQ has dropped 7.4% over the past month and is already down 13.6% from record high. So we're already seeing pretty big double-digit, dips in the markets, and nobody's really talking about it, it seems. I mean, I don't see that anywhere on the news, anything going on, much of that. I mean, so interesting to keep an eye on that. And like you said, I think it's just getting started. And, something I heard about gold that I thought was kind of funny is maybe one of the reasons gold price is driving up so high is because somebody's frantically buying all the gold to try and get it back in Fort Knox before Elon and Trump do the audit. So not sure if that's true or not, but it's one way to look at it.
Germany's been asking for its gold back because for the longest time we held, really since World War II, we held Germany's gold in our vaults because they were in fear of being invaded by the other countries. And I shouldn't say Germany, I just mean the EU, period.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's all being shipped back, and slowly but surely.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about gold is, it's not really driven by retail investors, individuals like you and me. It's very heavily
Definitely not
institutionally driven. I mean, so are the markets, but it's definitely one of those things I've been keeping an eye on. I mean, I've been, Chris, I've been buying gold and silver now since we've been doing this show, and it just continues to go up right now. It's been kind of nice. Now, I will say though, silver on the other hand, and I don't know your thoughts on this. I know you don't deal much with precious metals, Chris, but silver seems to be very undervalued. It has not had anywhere near the rise that gold has had over the last year. So silver might be somewhere to look. I don't know.
I think so. Mark Perry talks about it all the time. He's been in the precious metals game for a while. So Mark Perry's probably crushing it in precious metals right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So kind of rolling on. I mean, anything else in the markets right now?
Well, I mean, there's lots of, I'm just reading some of the comments here. I mean, any of you that, are in treasury bonds, you've seen a nice little long-term treasury bonds. That is, you've seen a nice little pop in the price, and, no surprise, right? There's a lot of fear in the markets. Now, interest rates have not moved, but the sentiment is that interest rates will move, which is why you're seeing movement in the pricing, but it's still way early for the long-term treasury game. But the nice thing about that game is you're being paid, right? The government is writing you checks, and that is your interest, your yield that you're getting. So, and the yield on treasuries are still really strong. I mean, anywhere, depending on what your duration is and how you invested in the treasury bonds, but you're getting anywhere between 3 and mid 4s, in a diversified treasury bond. And also too, just a little takeaway, folks, if any of you ever were like, I want to get into treasuries, but I just don't understand. I wish I could just find somebody that would do that. Well, I'm going to have good news for you coming in the next couple months. PMC Wealth is getting very close to launching, and that is going to be one of the major things that we will do in our cash management. So stay tuned. Lots more coming on that. We'll be here to help, not just help by telling you, but help by literally advising you on that. So stay tuned on that. That's coming soon. But the other thing too, I think that's important to really talk about is people keep asking me about real estate. And they keep saying, oh, is real estate going to go down in price? And my answer has been the same for years. I mean, real estate is always a good investment, no matter when you buy it, but there are just real estate strategies that may not be as good for certain, periods of time. Like I'm going to call one out, and this is going to piss some people off, but that's fine because I'm not trying to make friends. The sub 2 stuff, in subject to the original mortgage and some of that stuff, you can call it whatever you want. Danger, 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 because pricing of the properties will go down. So just think about all this. You got a lot of people out there doing sub 2. There's a lot of money you can make in it, and there's a right and a wrong way to do this. And I'm not going to call anybody out on it, but let's just call it for what it is. What do you think is going to happen? So if you don't understand it, so let's just say there's a seller who's selling their house and they got a price that they want to get. And an investor comes in and says, hey, I'll give you your price, but on my terms. You keep the mortgage in your name. I'll make your mortgage payments. And I'm going to get this wrong a little bit, but I'm just keeping it as simple as I can. I'll make the mortgage payments and then you can, and I'll give you X amount of dollars down if that's the case. And that way you don't have to pay tax on the whole thing. And there's a lot of incentives, that go into that. So nonetheless, seller says, yep, I got my price. I'll sell it to you. This income will help my family. Great. Everything's perfect, right? The seller of the house is on to their new life. They're getting their payments. The investor has the property. Maybe they rented it out and they're making money. Now, let me just kind of ask, and I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to ask you what you think. So let's just say the investor has $1,000 into a deal. I don't know. There's all different ranges, but let's say they got no money into the deal. And let's say the value of that property drops 10%. So now they're underwater 10% from what they paid for the property. And they still got to service that loan. Not really a big deal yet, right? So maybe not the best thing, but in time, the price will come back up and all will be well. Now, let's just assume that things do play out similar to the way we're talking about it, and people get pinched, and now it's harder to find a tenant in that property at the price you need to get to make a profit, to make a spread. The spread would be from the mortgage payment you're making, for the seller, or whatever amount you agreed to pay the seller, which is usually not just the mortgage payment, it's usually a little bit more, to what you can earn in rent. So let's just say pressure happens and rent prices are coming down. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, this is happening real time right now. There is a lot of supply in apartment buildings, especially in Florida. Rent prices are coming down. People are seeing vacancies for longer because they're not able to get that. So now this investor who has very little money into the deal gets pinched, prices down on the house, so they have no exit. They can't just go to the bank and refinance it because they owe money out of pocket and they don't have money out of pocket. Now rent prices compress, and now they're upside down for what they can rent the property for and what they owe every month. What do you think the outcome is? What does the investor do, Stephen?
They will more than likely just kind of walk away.
They walk away. I hate to say this, but wouldn't you? Like, you just walk away. You only got a couple grand in it, maybe 10 grand in it. You made money for a couple of years. So you got all your 10 grand back. Like, you got no skin in the game. But now the property's just not making sense. Who holds the bag when that investor walks away? Now, there's a lot of legal stuff that goes with this, but isn't it the person who sold the house who thought they were done? And now all of a sudden they start getting letters from the mortgage company saying, hey, you're delinquent, blah, blah, blah. Whose credit does that hurt? Yeah, the seller. Again, lots of different ways to shape this up, but I'm just telling you, this is going to play out real time too. You just watch, stay tuned, get the popcorn ready. Throughout the course of 2025 and 2026, you will remember this moment. You will, because that is, to me, I will not lend money on any second position sub 2 deals. I just won't, because it's too risky for me. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. So be very careful there. If you're flipping houses, that's fine. Just keep them really simple. And if you're doing any huge projects like full guts, then that's dangerous, because if price compresses, market softens, and it's harder right now for people to get mortgages. So all these things play into that. But is there a bad time to buy real estate? Absolutely not. There's just bad strategies to take advantage of during different market conditions. So I don't know. I get that a lot. Sorry I went long on that, but it's just, you just got to be really careful out there, folks.
No, it's important. And, on Money Club Monday, so, so Private Money Club holds a webinar every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern on Money Club Monday. And what we do is we have premier members of the Private Money Club that come on and kind of talk about deals that they have, opportunities, what they're doing as investors. So we hear a lot about what's going on around the country, what these buyers, investors are looking for. And all of them seem to be in agreement that they are looking for the better deals right now. They're trying to be more conservative, meaning they're going for lower loan to value ratios. So if you have, let's say you're buying a $100,000 home, maybe you could typically buy it at $60,000, which would be a 60% loan to value, which would typically, right now, people are looking even less than that. They're looking, hey, can I got this thing at 50%, at 45%. Like they're really trying to get these deals. And just give you an idea, banks usually lend around 70% loan to value. So, these investors are really looking for better deals, and the private lenders seem to be demanding that as well. The private lenders really want to see, hey, there's some room in this thing where if the market does pull back, if you do have to do some price drops to where the comps are today, is there still enough money in there to make money? And so I'm starting to see that right now through Private Money Club, and a lot of the investors inside there that continue to do strong deals. They're just being a little bit more picky and looking for the conservative ones, which I think is very, very smart. And to your point, Chris, on the multifamily, we've actually seen a huge spike in multifamily delinquency rates.
Oh, yes.
So this is a multifamily. So multifamily in real estate is considered 5 or more units per building. So 1 to 4 units. So a single family home, a duplex, a quadplex is typically still considered commercial or residential real estate. Once you get 5 plus, it's considered commercial or multifamily. So when we look at multifamily right now, you can see, leading up to COVID, you started to see a little bit of delinquencies. And then obviously COVID, happened what happened. But ever since about mid 2022, so going on the past 3 years, we're starting to see a serious spike. And it's just recently, in the last few months, surpassed what was going on after 2008 happened. So,
can I explain that real quick? It's very simple. Keep that chart up. Like, folks, when you look at a chart, maybe it just doesn't have any relevance, but this is very easy to understand. Commercial mortgages, okay? Let's just talk about any commercial loans, but we'll focus on the mortgages here because that's where the delinquencies are high. Think of it this way. Throughout COVID and even right before COVID, interest rates were pretty low, weren't they? During COVID, they were like historically blockbuster low. So imagine you were gobbling up, and just think syndications, think institutions. You were gobbling up all this property when the price was low during COVID and after during the pandemic, and you were able to get mortgages from traditional banks or institutions at 2, 3, 4%. Like, that's a freaking win, isn't it? That's amazing. Like, you're crushing it at that because you're making a ton of money because your mortgage payment's significantly lower. Now, let's fast forward a couple of years. We had a little bit of an issue with inflation. Well, that happens when you print $5.2 trillion and you just literally open the floodgates to giving everybody money. Well, inflation went up. And what did the Fed do? Jacked interest rates up very quickly. We literally went from the lowest ever to like normal, which was like 5, 6, 7%. So now where we're at here, the Fed's holding rates right now. Let's talk about one thing that most people forget about. Those commercial mortgages, almost every single one of them have a lock-in period for the rate. I know because I've done hundreds of these mortgages. It's usually 5, 7, or 10 years. So what does that mean? Well, that means for 5, 10, or 7 years, you got a locked-in rate of 2, 3, 4%. That's awesome. Do the math. 2020, maybe 2021, anywhere during that period of time till now. Where are we at? We're just starting the 5 years. So any of those mortgages that had a 5-year rate lock, which I had a bunch of them, what are they going to do? Are the banks just going to be like, hey, guys, hey, we're going to renew your mortgage. We're going to redo the mortgage, and we're just going to give you that 3% you used to have? Or would the bank say, hey, we got to redo the mortgage. We got to redo it because your rate lock's over. Essentially, your mortgage matured is kind of what's happening. And your rate's going to go from 3 to 8. 3 to 8, more than double. How are you feeling as the investor owning that property? Well, you run the numbers and you're like, holy shit, I can't even afford to keep this property. I'm going to be upside down. Why? Well, because they bought the properties at high prices, because during the pandemic, prices jacked up, but it was okay because interest rates were so low. So you still made the spread, made the money. You just seem to forget that your rate was only good for 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. So what are you seeing here? You're seeing a nice, smooth, straight line up, which represents exactly what I just mentioned. And they call this the commercial cliff. And we haven't even gone off the cliff yet. So you look at delinquencies where we're at now, higher than 2008. Holy shit, what happens when we click that 7-year number? What happens when all the loans that were commercial start to hit those 5, 7, and 10-year bumps? Now, the 10 years might be okay. Because, listen, if we go into a recession, the Fed will drop rates. So 10 years, may be good. 5, 7 years, not so good. So what are you going to start seeing? More delinquencies, more fire sales, more properties going up for sale, flooding the market with supply when there isn't as much demand as there was. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? This is not complicated. This is literally just simple, logical explanations of why you're seeing what you're seeing. Oh, but then, Stephen, one step on top of that, I know we're talking about delinquencies in the commercial, but, what about, I just looked, we just did a YouTube video on this, credit card debt. I remember we made a big deal of this last year. If I'm not mistaken, it was last year when credit card debt topped $1 trillion for the first time ever in history. You remember that?
Yep.
Do you know it's over 1.2, I think 1.24 trillion now? But then let's take that. Okay. Oh, no big deal. As long as people can make their credit card payments, like we're good. But then when we look at the layover of the delinquencies, credit card delinquencies, I don't know if you have that chart, look just like this. Delinquency. So no big deal. They're just delinquent. They're not defaulting yet. But what do you think happens to the majority of delinquencies, especially in a slowing economy, in a slowing or volatile market like we're in now? Well, they eventually become defaults, don't they? Well, flashback to 2007, 8, 9, 10, very similar scenario. Different outcome, different reasons, very similar. So here we go. Stephen, what you want to explain this?
It's just showing combining a few different things, but household debt hits $18.4 trillion. Auto and credit card delinquency, transition rates remain elevated. So total household debt increased by $93 billion to reach $18.04 trillion in the fourth quarter. Aggregate delinquency rates ticked up 0.1%. But let me pull up this other one real quick too. So here's delinquency rates on credit card loans, all commercial banks, and kind of hovering up here around this 3% mark, which you can see what happened in 08. It was higher, and then all of a sudden we were around these threes, all of a sudden shot up. So where we go from here, we'll see, Chris.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, listen, right now we still have pretty darn good employment. We don't have high unemployment. So as long as people have jobs, I think they can continue to make their credit cards. So, well, you're at that tipping point. We're not there yet. You're seeing the increase, but is it something to really be concerned with? No. Is it something that will become a problem? More than likely, yes. And I love some of these other folks too. There's a lot of things we're not accounting for here. Steve McCarthy said the towns and the cities consider 3 units commercial. Anything, literally, there's 2 ways to determine 5 units or more. Many towns and cities have reduced that down to 3 units because of zoning requirements.
I did not know that, honestly.
Yeah, and it's just, they're just trying to get more fees, the permits and everything else. Steven's in that business. So he's very well aware of what's going on. But also commercial is any loan that's given to a company. Right. So literally you could define any of the loans that you would get for even a single family house in your entity's name. It's commercial. So therefore you more than likely don't have a bank out there that's offering you a 30-year fixed rate like you do in your primary mortgage. Okay. Because they're not owner occupied. They're owned by an entity. Therefore they're commercial. Therefore they're going to fall into that. So the problem is way bigger than what you actually might think. And I love what Tracy Ann just said. She said real estate in Arizona is way down. Why is real estate in Arizona and Florida way down? Well, because it was way up. The faster it goes up, the faster it comes down. Buffalo, if you look, this is unbelievable, but you can all look it up. I've been getting a lot of people saying, oh, wow, you're from Buffalo. That's like the best real estate market in the country. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Buffalo? But by the numbers, it is. Buffalo and Rochester are at the top of the list. And that's probably because our real estate prices didn't skyrocket like Arizona and Florida. They did go up significantly. And as they went up, the biggest problem here in Buffalo for anyone buyer beware, Buffalo is a very good market from a pricing standpoint. From a profitability standpoint, I'll tell you what will kill you here. The zoning, the permitting, dealing with the freaking bureaucracy. It's New York, so let's not have to go there. But the taxes here, as prices of real estate have gone up, as so shall has taxes. I don't know why I said it that way, but like it's hard to make money here. It's not impossible. You can figure it out, but you got to factor the taxes and do not miss that. If you're coming from a place like Arizona, you're not used to property taxes. Here, they're high and they're going higher. So yeah, anyway, I'm done with that little rant.
Yeah, the other interesting thing about the taxes is, as all this happens, insurance has been increasing also across the board. So you're getting not only higher mortgage rates, but higher interest or higher insurance rates, as well as higher taxes on all this. So it's really just
pinching investors, man. I mean, it's really pinching investors. With that, can I transition and talk private equity real quick?
Yeah, please.
Does everybody understand private equity? I'm just going to read something because I got a white paper and I understand it quite well, but I think this did a good job. It said private equity firms raise money from wealthy investors, accredited investors, and institutions like pension plans and just lots of big institutions to buy companies. That's what they do. They buy companies with this raised money. So they use none of their own money. I want to be clear about that. Okay. They use a lot of debt. That's what they use, debt. Now, let's keep going. They intend to improve the company's operations and then sell it for a profit. They typically hold these companies between 4 and 7 years, during which they cut costs. Okay. Some of you may have worked for a company that got bought by a PE, and this you saw. They cut costs, they cut operations, and then they sell it for a profit. They literally skin the business down to the bare necessities. They do it very quickly so that you don't see the long-term effects. You just see the short-term gains of cutting costs, because cutting costs, cutting staff, cutting operation budgets in the long run hurts the company. Okay. In the short run, it makes it really profitable. So they've got this formula where they make it really profitable and then they just exit it. They typically hold them from 4 to 7 years and then they exit, ideally to much higher valuations, because valuations are determined on EBITDA, or let's just keep it simple, profits, net profits. Okay. And then they roll back in the, taxes and a couple other things, but anyway, we can look up EBITDA. They pocket a substantial return, not only for their investors, but also for themselves through management fees, lots of management fees, a share of the profits, but it's not called share of the profits. It's called carried interest because it's taxed at a lower rate. Smart people, right? Yeah, they are. Trump's trying to close that loophole. But here's what's going on. If any of you have grandparents in nursing homes or assisted living facilities, PE is targeting them massively. And what they're doing is they're buying these senior living facilities. This is criminal. This is just awful. They're buying these facilities. Now think of an assisted living facility. Typically, a lot of the people in some of these places, what they do is they put a big deposit down so that they can buy into it. And then they pay, it's usually a pretty high, we'll call it rent, right, to live there. And they get lots of amenities and everything. The PE companies are buying these buildings at alarming rates. Okay. They're just gobbling up these old folk homes and communities. And then what they do is they come in and do exactly what I told you that they're going to do: cut costs, cut operations, and jack up prices for their residents. Well, here's a story. This is a real story from NBC News. The Berets paid $314,000 entry fee for their townhouse in 2013, plus monthly maintenance fee, and they didn't own the property. But if they decided to leave, their contract promised that they'd receive 85% of the current value determined by a local realtor. So think about that. That's not a bad deal, right? You get all the amenities, all the services of this assisted living or this townhouse with all this stuff, the maintenance. You don't have to do anything. We have a bunch of these around here, so I know how they operate. So you do that, and in your mind, all right, I put $314,000 in, and when I want to leave, I get 85% back of the current market. So of course, if it was 2013, the market price has gone up, right? Here we go. So Bray's 84 years old. Okay, he's a Vietnam veteran, and here's the story. So they have this townhouse. They got a knock on the door, and it was in late June 2023. River Glen had been sold to a private equity firm in the real estate investment group. She was told, and her financial contract, she was told her contract's changing. And now River Glen, the new owners, which is a PE firm, sorry, there's a lot of detail here I'm trying to get past. They jacked up her monthly maintenance from $1,395, get a load of this shit, to $6,500. You're retired on a fixed income, a lot of times Social Security. You spent the majority of the money that you had for the buy-in to get into this facility because you needed the services and your family thought this was a good idea. Now, this PE firm jacks your price up $6,500. That's a 365% increase. What do? Well, you leave. This is where it gets good. So they didn't like the deal and they left the community, and she only received 75% of her entry fee she paid more than a decade later. Folks, that's just one story of many. PE firms, they're and Stephen, you know this, or Steve McCarthy, they're targeting roofing companies, plumbing companies, electrical contractors. They're targeting financial companies. They're targeting all sorts of industries. So what they do is they come in and they look at a profitable industry, but they look at an industry or a business that's profitable, but could be a lot more profitable with cost cutting in operations and systems and processes. They buy that company, they strip it down, and then they sell it. But all of that is done with somebody else's money. So if the business doesn't do well, which I got a YouTube video that I just went through all these companies that recently were all bought out by PE firms at crazy valuations that all failed. Tons of them. Who loses the money? The PE firm? No. The investors, the pensions, the institutions, the wealthy individuals. Now I know you're like, let them lose the money. But aren't those wealthy individuals and institutions the ones controlling a lot of the employment out there? Yeah. So as we start to see this fallout and this chaos, the PE firms are getting bigger, the investors are getting smaller because they're losing, and the round and round and round we go. And not only that, PE firms are also getting financing from banks for these deals they propped up and made look good. So now banks are going to take the hit when these things go bad. Anyway, are you all seeing what this could potentially look like? Don't think PE is your friend. PE is the enemy of the state, if you will. So anyway, that's my PE rant. What do you got, Stephen? I got two more things before we wrap. One is Ukraine and then one is Iran. But before we do that, can I give a quick shout out?
Yeah, man.
I got something really exciting that Hannah Kessler and myself finally got over the finish line. It was a labor of love, a difficult one, but we did our first children's book. It's called The Companion. The book, if any of you have ever, when you were a child or remember when you had kids, The Giving Tree or The Missing Piece by Shel Silverstein. So this book is written very much like that. It has little stories, about the girl and the companion. So this is the girl modeled after my little girl. And then the companion is just this furry, beautiful little critter. And it's about these crazy adventures in the kingdom and going through. And the root of this whole thing is the infinite banking concept. The companion is the policy. The girl is the insured or the client, right? The policy holder. And this little girl wants to go out and do these crazy adventures and these wild adventures, which the companion and her always talk about, but she wants to do them before the companion's ready. In other words, before the companion is in its efficiency point, before it's capitalized. So the companion, just like the policy, will always give. You want money, you can take it for anything you want, but remember the rules of the infinite banking concept. You have to be an honest banker and you have to give back. And the companion tells the little girl this: I will give you anything you want. You just make sure you return it back to me because I can't eat alone. And it's referred to as the companion when the little girl goes off on these journeys, can't eat. Nonetheless, the little girl does this once, twice, several times. She keeps taking and taking and taking from the companion, which leaves the companion weak and weaker, demonstrated by awesome graphics. Okay. And the little girl just keeps doing this. But then the little girl comes back to a massive early winter and she needs warmth. Okay. I'm just trying to show you just some of the graphics behind this. And the companion says, I will help you. I will keep you warm. Gives to her again. But then it warms up and she starts going on more and more journeys. The companion keeps giving her, giving her, giving her. And then there's little songs like hand in hand, our steps may slow through fields that once were green and gold. The road is rough. The skies are gray. We're bravely walking, come what may. Windstorms. Companion gives more and just keeps giving and giving until the companion is almost gone. And then tragedy strikes. The kingdom is attacked. The dragons swoop in and want to take everything from her. The companion keeps stepping in and trying to save her, but warns her that I have given you all that I have. So if there's any more threats, like an early winter, like a windstorm, like a dragon, I can no longer help you or save you. The little girl realizes the fault in her actions, the fault in what she did. All she did is take and take and take and never gave back. And because of that, she's in drastic danger. The end of the book ends on a merry, merry way, but it's quite the journey. And the end is hand in hand, we walk once more with lessons learned and faith restored. The road ahead may rise and fall, but I'll be by your side through it all. This is the children's book that doesn't just teach money. It teaches how to be a good person. It teaches so many things to our children. And I would beg to ask all of you that, in your lives, what are the things you wish you were taught? Bruce Lee said, instead of giving your children all the things that you wish you had, teach them the things that you should have learned when you were young, or something to that extent. So wisdom that could change the course of your child's life is what this book is. And what I'd ask of each and every one of you is I am trying to get an Amazon bestseller out of this. And And what I would like all of you to do is we're going to put the link up. If you can grab a copy of the book. We're not doing the big push until April 18th, but everything, I'm just trying to get this out there. So if you got young ones, you got grandchildren, grab a copy of the book and you will love it. Thank you very much. Stephen, let's keep moving on.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of real fast. We were talking about jobs before, and I read a really interesting thing. Do you know who Mike Rowe is? Do you follow Mike Rowe? He was the gentleman from Dirty Jobs, if you remember that show, Dirty Jobs, but very outspoken guy, always into, helping young people, learn, actual jobs and things like that. But he was quoted just this past week. Mike Rowe came out and said, for every 5 tradespeople that retire this year, 2 replace them. It's been that way for 12 years. He said, I don't need to be a mathematician to know that's not good. 7.2 million able-bodied men today in their prime working years are not only unemployed, they're not even looking. What are they doing? Well, 2,000 hours a year on average on screens. So he goes on to say that he got a call from a company called Blue Forge Alliance, which is in charge of what's called the Maritime Industrial Base. The Maritime Industrial Base consists of 15,000 individual companies, all of whom are tasked with delivering thermonuclear-powered submarines to the U.S. Navy, 3 a year, 2 Virgin class and 1 Columbia. So Blue Forge Alliance calls Mike Rowe and says, we need to hire some tradespeople, and we're wondering if you or your foundation could help us. And he said, I'll try. As you probably learned, it's pretty skinny out there. How many do you need? They said 100,000 tradespeople they need to hire right now. So 100,000 tradespeople for that one industry that most people don't even know exists. And then he said he started to go down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, where else are these people needed? 80,000 in the automotive industry just as technicians right now. So what he said was, hey, you got to start with these 8th graders. We got to start looking at people that are going into high school and teaching them that, hey, college is not always what it used to be. College might not even be necessary in the future, especially with AI and robots and what they're going to be able to do. Tradespeople are what we need. So I bring that up because I just wanted to give a shout out. I had a plumber at my house this morning, plumbing in an outdoor shower for us. And I told him I was getting ready to go live on a podcast. And he goes, I actually love listening to financial education and news. He goes, what is it? So my wife gave him the podcast, and he's actually out there listening to us right now, which is kind of cool. So shout out to my plumber that decided to learn about something new, take action and listen in. So I just thought that was really neat. But I think that's great advice too, though, Chris, is, what are young people looking at doing? So it just goes right along with your new book, The Companion, because it's so important to teach people, what's actually valuable in life, what's actually important, how money works at a much younger age. Let's get people started as kids and let that influence them throughout their lifetimes. One of the things when I was younger, my father was an entrepreneur. He owned among other businesses when I was very small, but when I was in high school, he had a used car dealership, just a little buy here, pay here lot. He owned and operated it all by himself. I would help him out as a high school student, washing cars, going to the auctions with him, driving cars, things like that. But I started to learn a little bit about the entrepreneurial industry and what that looks like. And obviously I've carried it through my entire lifetime, but I give a lot of the credit. One of my mom's boyfriends owned a construction company. It was him and 3 employees. And I worked for almost 3 years as a carpenter's assistant with him as well, kind of just seeing the ins and outs of these small businesses. And so, I was fortunate to kind of have those influences younger in age, even after college, didn't know what I wanted to do, but it was always an influence in my life. So I love that you guys wrote that book geared towards children and helping young people. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Chris, on that.
Yeah, I started this whole journey of like trying to educate kids and having, giving parents the ability to do that. I started with that letter to my daughter, the 6 laws of wealth turned into parables with my TEDx talk, which you can all watch. Then from there, this children's book, there's some other initiatives I've got going on right now. I made a big pledge from our private foundation to Vivi's private school, because you can't do this at public schools, but a private school. We're going to build an arts and we're basically an amphitheater. And then in the agreement for my donation, which I'm going to be, and if any of you are looking for charitable donations, I'm going to be doing a big push to raise money for this amphitheater. But the whole purpose of this place is so that I can teach financial education to not just the children in stories like the children's book that I did there, but also the TEDx talk, but also teach teachers. So this school has several hundred, students, which I know isn't large, but you got to start somewhere. And we can get the teachers to understand how some of this financial education works and the truth about money. So in the agreement to build this, in my pledge, which is a large pledge, what I've gotten permission to do is now create curriculum for children on financial education and how money works, but also to teach the teachers and also run events there in the local community. So you'll be hearing more about that as we kind of put that whole raise together. But if any of you are looking for charitable donations for 2025, please consider us. The Park School Foundation is a 501c3, so you'd be donating direct to them, not to me. And you'd be able to get the deduction and the receipts for that. So yeah, doing a lot, and also working with Dr. Gina, who does a lot of stuff with this. So we're going to, pioneer some other stuff, but just pushing. It's a hard, heavy uphill battle trying to, get financial education in any type of education.
Yeah, very, very, very cool stuff, man. And so kind of in that light, of efficiency education, so Elon Musk continues to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE, and trying to clean up the government and waste, fraud, abuse, everything else that's gone on. So they continue to publish what they're up to on X. So they have their official account, just to kind of give you a few ideas. Well, I look at this every single day because it's fascinating to me. But just the past couple posts. I mean, this was 9 hours.
How much have they saved so far, Stephen? Do you know?
I don't even know the total. I mean, Elon came out last week and I think he said right about $1 trillion they're at so far.
Good Lord.
So agencies terminated 80 wasteful contracts today with a ceiling value of $206 million, saving $139 million, including $2.1 million at the State Department. Earlier in the day, $13 million in taxpayer dollars. Reference flow has been returned to the Treasury. Data apples and oranges. But one of the things I find fascinating about what Doge is doing is just the backlash and the fight against it. And you see this in all of the oh man, have you seen what they're doing to these Teslas around the country? I mean, there's everyday people that are brainwashed out of their minds are going around keying Teslas and drawing swastikas on them. And it's just, it's wild what's going on. They have all these protests, quote unquote protests, where they're like lighting Tesla dealerships on fire and spray painting all over them and really destroying them. I mean, it's wild to see. I think a lot of these are paid agitators and people going against Doge. But it's really amazing because not that long ago, President Obama was announcing that he was going to do something very similar to Doge and putting Joe in charge of it. So I'll just play like a few seconds of this just so you get an idea, and I'll share it in the comments. But this was nothing new. But because Trump and Elon are doing it, all of a sudden it's like the worst thing in the world. It's fascinating.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody.
And again, I'll let you guys watch that. We don't have time right now. But the bottom line is you have all these people that are fighting against this and not, and just, it's wild to see. And it's something that's been, people have wanted for a very long time. It's something that, other presidents have talked about, like I just showed with Obama. And so it just goes to show you how political and the political division, just how bad it's gotten in this country. I mean, tell me who's against, Chris, who's against wasteful spending of our tax dollars and fraud and corruption and abuse.
I thought everybody was. I truly did. I thought like no matter what side you were on, I thought everybody was against wasteful spending, against, corruption, stealing, but boy, I had it all wrong, or I had the influence and the brainwashing wrong and underestimated that, because it's just crazy to see. I mean, I don't even watch that stuff. I just think it's the most idiotic thing, but I've watched a couple things where these people at these, protests are being asked, what is it that you don't like about what Doge is doing? And they literally don't even, I haven't heard one of them have a legitimate reason for why they're doing it. It's literally like, again, I'll go to the blind following the blind off a cliff. Like they just don't even know why they're protesting. They're just angry. Some of them are angry because their job was eliminated through Doge, which I guess I can understand, but like your job probably was wasteful. Your job was probably not needed. You were probably milking the system. Like it's accountability. That's what lacks. It's logic. We have a society that lacks logic. I hate to say that, but we certainly do. I put posts up on Facebook, social media, and everything, and the sheer hate that I get on some of them, I'm just like, you can't even logically think anymore. It's wild to just watch what's happening, and it's wild to watch, the people that were so for electric cars and batteries, and it was clean, and so against oil, but yet they're out there burning electric cars, which puts terrible toxins in the air. Like it's incredibly dangerous, and they burn wicked hot. I mean, I don't even understand it. And I'm not going to try to, because, you can't fix stupidity is what I always say. So why worry about it?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know we only have a few minutes left. I know you had a couple things you still wanted to get to.
Yeah, a few things, and I'll hit these super quick. I want to hit Ukraine. We haven't really hit on that. There's so much stuff that we have. It is so difficult. Ever since Trump took office, it's almost impossible for us to cover all the chaos and just things that are going on. But
yeah, I was going to get into Signal Gate. I was going to some of the immigration stuff, but go ahead. Go.
Yeah, I mean, like sending, people to an El Salvador prison that aren't guilty,
Well, here's the story with that, though, Chris. It was real fast. Let me hit that, because I know it was sent over. Joe Rogan was talking about it. So there was multiple articles.
I didn't even pay attention until I saw it on Joe Rogan.
Right. Let off by The Atlantic, which, again, The Atlantic, the editor, Jeff Goldberg, who is the guy that came out with the whole Signal Gate story. He was out of the Signal. I'll get it. That's a whole different discussion. But with the immigration part, where they came out with this news story. They talked all about how this father was illegally, arrested, obtained by ICE. He was sent back to this and made the story sound like just the Trump administration severely messed up. They took an innocent guy that was just a family guy that was living his life and sent him back. Well, what they left out of that story, Chris, and what nobody else is talking about, was 6 years ago, that guy was convicted and found guilty of child trafficking, of drug abuse, and of being a leader of the M13 or M16. The gang, whatever, the M16 gang. He was one of the leaders, found guilty in a court of law in Maryland 6 years ago of child trafficking, drug abuse, everything else. The only reason he wasn't deported at that time was because of political reasons. And they said if he was sent back, he would have been in danger. So, there was a clerical error that sent him back. He was more on a waiting list where they were prioritizing other people to send back before they got to him, but he was sent back with that group. So was it a clerical error? Yes, but was he a criminal and a bad person and a leader in the M16 gang? Absolutely 100%. And that's the part they completely left out of the story.
Yeah,
and
they made you
context like that matters, though.
This dad with multiple kids, a young, kid that has disabilities, is now ill, is sent over there, and they weren't even guilty, blah, 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 just because he had a tattoo of a crown. Anyway, but it's just like, it's so easy for the media to just flip a story, and there's always two sides to every story. So you know what? I hate to say it, but I just ignore that stuff. So, but this you can't ignore right here. Mr. Zelensky. Now, I know during the Biden administration, lots of people praised Zelensky standing up to the big bad Mr. Putin. And I'm not saying Putin's a good guy by any freaking means. I've read books that put fear through me about that man. But, nonetheless, Zelensky's no angel. Zelensky, literally, I'll just put it this way. Like, he took power, pretty much stopped anyone from being able to elect anybody else to replace him, by calling martial law. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure this out. Walking away from negotiating tables, trying to end this war multiple times. Here's some of the facts. There's an estimated 500,000 military casualties, including Ukrainian MIAs, amputees, and are now re-entering military services due to manpower shortages. That's just the Ukrainian losses, and it's over 1 million if you put in the Russian losses. So 3 years after the war started, despite billions in military aid from Western allies, Ukraine's territory map remains largely unchanged. Russia continues to control Crimea, Donbas, and the key Black Sea ports. Sorry, I'm getting to it. All right, here we go. And roughly 10 million Ukrainians have been dispossessed because of the war. But listen carefully. This is fact. Zelensky's personal wealth has increased $20 to $30 million. while the average Ukrainian earns between $5,000 and $7,000 annually. Is that corruption? Well, it goes on to just talk about the corruption, and I'm not going to get into it, but I could share this white paper in here just real quick because it just makes me sick to even see this shit. It's just sickening. I can't get it to work. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of bullet points that talk about all the things that have actually been done by Zelensky to keep him in power, to keep him in control. So when you look at it, there's that. And then the very last thing I wanted to hit on is Iran. You know, there's some pretty big threats being thrown out from the Trump administration in regards to Iran. I don't really know what to make of it, but you know, when you talk about war, this is a serious one. But you know, he's trying to curtail the nuclear capabilities of Iran, and he made a suggestion that the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, President Trump has made some positive gains closing the border, and I'm not finding it, but there's just like a catch-up thing. But it's talking about Iran, so pay attention to that. It probably won't be in the news much, but there's definitely some serious heating up going on between Trump and Iran and what's going on there. Stephen, do you have anything to report on that?
No, nothing new on the Russia-Ukraine stuff.
I had it all here, but when I bring these articles over, sometimes I get lost in there's just so much data.
Yeah, no worries. Just some final news kind of on the U.S. side. You continue to see bankruptcies on companies that, you know, are from our childhood, Chris, that have been around for many, many years. The latest bankruptcy was Hooters. Looks like Hooters is...
No! Yeah, I've never even gone, and now I'm never going to be able to go? Damn.
Hooters is good. You've never been to a Hooters?
I haven't. I've never been. Shame on me.
What the heck? All right. Well, you do live in Buffalo, so you guys have the real Buffalo wings up there. You know, we always went to Hooters to eat the wings, right? Anyways, so they continue to see other bankruptcies. But just last year, I was just interested to see what else has gone bankrupt. And I pulled up CNN here. It said 12 companies that have been bankrupt over the last in 2024. So Big Lots, which I thought was interesting. I figured that discount stuff, but I think with the internet these days, a company like Big Lots, it's hard to keep those big box stores going. Bowflex, Express for Men Clothing, Joann's, LL Flooring, Party City, Red Lobster bankrupt, Spirit Airlines. I think we all saw that coming. TGI Fridays bankrupt. True Value Hardware, and Tupperware. So just some interesting bankruptcies last year I wasn't aware of. And QVC right now, trying to avoid bankruptcy, is pivoting, and they're going to do the first 24-hour live streaming shopping event on TikTok. So QVC is pivoting from television, and they're going to test some stuff with social media, starting with TikTok. So we'll continue to see, you know, legacy companies kind of move over to the internet and social media. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Just to kind of recap, a couple more things real fast. Val Kilmer, rest in peace.
Iceman.
Iceman from Top Gun, Jim Morrison from the movie The Doors, as well as many, many other movies. But
so many iconic movies. Like
65 years old too. Like that's a shame.
Like one of my favorite, man. And you know, I love you know, the last Top Gun, because it really did pay tribute to him. So like, if you didn't watch, you know, Top Gun, like Val Kilmer, Iceman, you know, was sick and eventually died in that movie. So like, I think Tom Cruise, like, kudos to him. He did a solid, like, good job of like just, you know, putting Val Kilmer back in, even though he couldn't talk. And I watched a lot of stuff on Val Kilmer and like what happened to him and how he was literally doing awesome things, even though he was falling apart. He was a hell of an actor, and yeah, he'll be missed.
Yeah, great movies. I mean, Batman, Tombstone. I mean, the list goes on. So it's kind of a sad one to see there. And then sports, kind of a fun season for sports right now. If you're a sports fan, March Madness Final Four this weekend. Good luck if your team is in it. I don't really have one, but I'll be watching because I like the Final Four. Baseball's back. Baseball opening day last week, which is kind of cool. And the hockey playoffs are coming up along with NBA. So a good time in sports right now outside of football. So I think that's all I got for us today, Chris.
Yeah. One little factual piece that was put up on Instagram here is I'll just spell it out. KELNAKAZ put up a good post. It said, end the Fed and you will end the printing and money in laundering. And I couldn't agree more. But how do you end the Fed? You got to read, you know, The Creature from Jekyll Island and The Secrets of the Federal Reserve. I don't know how you end the Fed. But with that being said, if any of you can figure out how to end the Fed, please let your administration know. Let the Trump administration know. I'm sure they're already working on it, but it's too powerful. to end. And anyway, with that being said, thanks for joining us for another episode of WTF. Make sure you join us this afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern, for Wealth Webinar. It's sure to be an awesome one. We've been having over 200 people on each webinar, so keep it rolling. Help us support that. And also, last little plug, if any of you are out in San Diego tonight, join me at the Legacy International Hotel. We're going to be doing a pop-up, and no registration, just show up at the lobby bar. I'll be there. We'll meet and greet, have some fun, share some stories. 7 p.m. tonight, San Diego, the Legacy International. We'll see you there tonight. With that being said, thanks everybody. Till the next time.
Thank you.